the mountains had a way of stripping a man down to his bones. That December morning, the Sacramento Range stood frozen and unforgiving, its pine trees rising like silent judges beneath a pale winter sky. Snow clung to every branch, heavy and unmoving, while the wind cut through the forest with the sharpness of a blade drawn slow across skin. Each breath burned my lungs. My beard was stiff with frost, my eyelashes crusted white, and my fingers, buried deep inside wool gloves, ached with a numbness that promised pain if I stopped moving too long. I had been following deer tracks for 2 days straight. Out here, a man alone in winter learned one truth fast: find meat, or freeze quiet where no one would ever know your name.
I will always protect you.
Hunger made you sharp.
Mama.
Cold made you honest. And the mountains didn't care which one killed you first.
I know, Mama.
The tracks had been clean at first. Hoofs pressed deep into the snow. Fresh. Clear. Hopeful. I remember thinking that maybe, just maybe, luck hadn't abandoned me entirely. Then the trail changed. The deer prints broke apart, scattered, and beside them appeared something else. Dark spots splashed across the white like spilled ink. I stopped walking. Bent down. Touched the snow. Blood. Still warm. Too red. Too deliberate. My breath caught hard in my chest. My hand slid to the Winchester without thinking, fingers curling around the worn stock like it was part of my body. Instincts didn't fade, not after years in the cavalry, not after burying the dead. If anything, grief sharpened them. 3 years alone in these mountains had taught me to listen to the quiet voice that whispered something's wrong. The cavalry taught me how to survive. Burying my wife and daughter taught me what survival costs. I followed the blood downhill, step by careful step, until the land dipped and the sound of moving water reached my ears. A creek cut through the rocks below, half frozen, whispering beneath a skin of ice. Steam rose faintly where the current refused to surrender to winter. That's when I saw her. She lay face down in the shallow water, her dark hair tangled and frozen against the ice, her body twisted at an angle that made my stomach turn. Her wrists were bound behind her back with rawhide pulled so tight it had bitten deep, cutting through skin, chewing nearly to bone. Her dress, deerskin, Apache, was torn open and soaked through, clinging to her like a second wound. Bruises darkened her back and legs, blooming beneath the skin like fingerprints of cruelty. Someone had left her there to die. My first instinct was to turn away. Every hard lesson I'd learned screamed at me to keep walking. I had sworn I was done with wars. Done with causes. Done with saving anyone. I'd burned my blue coat the day I buried Mary and little Emma, standing over 2 graves that proved doing the right thing didn't protect a damn thing in this world. Helping only taught the world where to cut you deeper. I took 1 step back. Then her eyes opened. Dark. Sharp. Unbroken. They locked onto mine with a defiance so fierce it stopped me cold. There was no fear in them. No pleading. Just a woman daring the world, and me, to finish what it had started. In that moment, I knew I was already lost. I knelt and cut the rawhide from her wrists. She didn't cry out. Didn't flinch. She watched me the entire time, measuring, weighing whether I'd be any different from the men who'd beaten and bound her. I shrugged off my wool coat and wrapped it around her trembling shoulders. I won't hurt you, I said quietly. She didn't answer, but she understood. When I asked if she could walk, she forced herself upright. Took 3 steps. Then her legs gave out. I caught her before she hit the snow. For one dangerous heartbeat, our faces were inches apart. I smelled pine smoke and cold water in her hair. Felt fever burning beneath her skin, wild and relentless. "Ko," she whispered. Then darkness claimed her. I lifted her into my arms and carried her 3 miles through snow and memory, each step heavier than the last. Back to a cabin that hadn't heard another heartbeat since my family died. Back to a place I'd sworn would remain empty forever. I didn't know it yet, but the trail I followed that morning wasn't leading to death. It was leading me back to life. I laid her on my bed, the same narrow cot where grief had slept beside me for years. For a long moment, I just stood there, lantern shaking in my hand, staring at a woman who had bled into the last place I thought still belonged to the dead. That bed had held nothing but memories since Mary and Emma were taken by fever. Now it held breath. Warmth. A fragile, stubborn spark of life. That night, I cleaned her wounds by lantern light. Whiskey for the pain. Cold creek water for the blood. I tore my spare shirt into strips, binding her ribs where boots had crushed the air from her lungs, wrapping her thigh where a knife had kissed flesh too close for comfort. She groaned once, low in her throat, but never cried out. Old scars circled her wrists, faded rope burns, healed wrong and ugly, telling a story I didn't need her to speak. This wasn't the first time chains had tried to claim her. She was young, mid-20s maybe, but carried herself even in unconsciousness like someone who'd lived 10 lifetimes too many. Strong shoulders built for work, not comfort. Calloused hands that had known labor, not softness. She was a survivor carved by wind, hunger, and cruelty, the kind the frontier forged without mercy. Her fever came with nightfall. It burned through her for 3 days straight. She thrashed and muttered in a language I didn't know, sweat soaking the blankets as winter howled outside like it was trying to get in. I stayed awake most of those nights, feeding the fire, wiping her brow, wondering more than once if I'd carried her home just to watch her die slow. On the third night, I heard movement. My hand went to my Colt before my mind caught up. Old habits don't die, they just wait. I pushed the door open hard, heart pounding, ready for whatever the darkness had brought. She was pressed into the far corner of the cabin. Barefoot. Shaking. Eyes wild with fear and fury, like a trapped animal deciding whether to fight or flee. The lantern light caught the bruises on her skin, the tension in her body, the way her hands clenched like weapons. "You're safe," I said slowly, careful with every word. She didn't believe me. I saw it in her eyes. So I did the only thing I could think of. I set my gun on the table between us. Stepped back. Turned my shoulders away. Then I left her alone. Trust doesn't come from promises. It comes from space. Days passed in careful silence. I brought food. Water. Wood for the fire. I spoke only when necessary. She watched me like a cornered wolf, eyes tracking every movement, muscles coiled for escape. But she ate. She drank. And little by little, the raw terror in her gaze dulled into something else, cautious awareness. On the 8th day, I found her standing. Barely. One hand braced against the log wall, legs trembling with effort, jaw set in stubborn determination that would have impressed any cavalry sergeant I ever knew. "What you want?" she asked in broken English. "Nothing," I answered. "You were hurt. I helped. White men kill my people." I didn't argue. I'd worn the uniform. I'd seen the camps burn. I carried that weight whether I wanted to or not. I'm not that man anymore. She studied me for a long time. Long enough that I felt stripped bare beneath her gaze. Then, finally, she spoke. Naili. I repeated it carefully. Her name. Something sacred offered freely. I taught her words: safe, water, fire. She taught me Apache, Shakisi, my friend. One night, as the fire settled low and the wind eased outside, Naili began to sing. Her voice was soft. Raw. Uneven. A mother's song. The kind that carries grief without needing words. It hung in the cabin like smoke, heavy and aching. When it ended, I told her about Emma. 6 years old. Loved wildflowers. Gone in one cruel week to fever. Naili knelt and drew in the ash, a man, a woman, a child. My son, she said quietly. 4 years. He waits. That's when I understood. She hadn't survived for herself. She had survived for him. I'll help you get back to him, I said. The look she gave me felt like being handed back my soul. 17 days after I found her in the snow, I saddled my horse and rode into Lincoln for supplies. The town hadn't changed. It never did. Mud in the streets. Smoke in the air. Men with hard eyes and harder hearts leaning against doorframes like they own the world. I kept my head down, my coat pulled tight, just another drifter looking to trade coin for flour and salt. The saloon was thick with smoke and lies. I'd barely taken 2 steps inside when I heard the name, the kind of name that makes the room go quiet inside your chest. Cyrus Pettigrew. Ex-cavalry. Discharged with disgrace. A man who'd learned that war paid better when it never ended. I didn't turn around. Didn't need to. I'd know that voice anywhere. $200, one man said. That's what Pettigrew's offering. Apache woman slipped his chains. Knows where the Mescalero band's hiding. My fingers tightened around the tin cup in my hand. Human misery, bought and sold like cattle. I left my drink untouched and walked out without looking back. The wind slapped my face as I mounted up, and I rode hard, harder than I had in years. Snow blurred the trail. The horse snorted, legs burning, but I didn't slow. Every mile between Lincoln and my cabin felt like borrowed time. When I reached the cabin, the sky was already dark. Light glowed through the cracks between the logs. Smoke curled from the chimney. For a moment, I just sat there in the saddle, listening. Then I pushed the door open. Naomi was standing by the fire. She'd cooked rabbit, my trap, my knife, but prepared it her way, seasoned with wild herbs she'd gathered herself. The smell filled the cabin, rich and warm, turning that empty place into something almost like a home. We ate in silence, the kind that doesn't press down on you. The kind that settles. After a while, she looked up. "Why you save me?" she asked quietly. I set my tin plate aside. "Because I couldn't let you die." She studied my face, then reached out. Her fingers brushed the long scar running from my ear to my jaw. Her touch was light, careful, like she was tracing a story written into my skin. "You hurt too," she said. Something broke open inside me then, something I'd kept buried under snow and years and regret. No one had touched me like that since Mary. No one had seen me. I told her about the Lance. About the men I'd lost. About the family I couldn't protect. She listened without flinching, without judgment. When I finished, she stepped closer. When she kissed me, it wasn't gentle. It was survival. 2 broken souls colliding in the dark, desperate to feel alive. Her mouth was warm and urgent, her hands gripping my shirt like she was afraid the ground might vanish beneath her feet. I pulled her close, feeling the lean strength of her body, the heat of her skin through thin fabric. Firelight danced across scars, hers and mine, as we clung to each other like the world outside didn't exist. Like the cold, the war, the hatred, and the years of loneliness had no claim on us in that moment. That night, the cabin breathed again. But dawn has a way of reminding you what you owe. Morning light crept through the cracks in the walls, pale and unforgiving. Naomi sat on the edge of the bed, pulling her blanket close around her shoulders. Her eyes were steady when she spoke, but her voice carried weight. "I must go to my son." I nodded. I'd known this was coming. Known it from the moment she'd drawn that child in the ash. "I know," I said. "And I'll take you." She looked at me then, not with gratitude, not with doubt, but with something deeper. Something like trust. Outside, the mountains waited. And somewhere beyond them, so did the men who would try to take her back. But for the first time in years, I wasn't running from anything. I was riding toward it. We rode hard. Snow fell heavy from a sky the color of old iron, swallowing sound and distance alike. The world narrowed to the rhythm of hooves and breath, to the white blur rushing past us as the mountains closed in. We stayed off the main trails, cutting through timber and frozen gullies, moving like ghosts where we could. On the second day, I saw the tracks. 5 riders. The marks were fresh, too fresh. Horses shod with iron. Men who knew how to follow without advertising it. I dismounted, crouched low, brushed snow aside with my glove. Pettigrew. I felt it in my gut before my mind caught up. I straightened slowly, eyes scanning the tree line, the ridges, the quiet spaces where men learn to hide. Nally watched me, reading my face. "They follow us," she said. "Yes." Her jaw tightened. "No fear. Just resolve." We pushed on until nightfall and made camp in a shallow draw where the wind couldn't reach us. We didn't light a fire. We ate cold food, wrapped in blankets, listening to the forest breathe. When she pressed close to me for warmth, I could feel her heart racing beneath her ribs. "I am afraid," she whispered. "So am I said. "But they won't take you again. I swear it." Dawn came cold and sudden. The snow glowed pale blue as the first light crept over the ridgeline. That was when the horses snorted. Then came the sound of leather and metal. 5 shapes emerged from the trees, spreading out to cut off the trail ahead. Pettigrew rode at the center. He sat tall in the saddle, wearing a cavalry coat with the insignia ripped away, like a man who'd been cast out but refused to forget. His smile was thin and cruel. "Been a long time," he called. "Didn't think I'd find you playing savior." I stepped forward, Winchester in hand. "Ride away." He laughed. "Can't do that. That woman's worth $200 to me. She's not for sale." He leaned closer. "You cost me my commission once. Now you're protecting savages?" Nally spoke before I could stop her. Her English was clear. Steady. "I am not afraid of you anymore." Pettigrew's smile vanished. His hand dropped for his gun. The world exploded. My Winchester roared. One rider pitched backward, thrown clean from his horse. Nally fired from the saddle beside me, her shot cracking sharp as breaking ice. Another man screamed and went down clutching his shoulder. Pettigrew fired. The bullet tore into my left shoulder, spinning me around. I hit the snow hard, breath knocked clean from my lungs. Pain flared white-hot, blinding, the kind that steals your voice and your strength all at once. I heard shouting. Horses screaming. More shots. Through the haze, I saw Nally move. She didn't freeze. Didn't cry out. She dropped the rifle, yanked my Colt from my belt, and stepped forward into the open like she'd been born there. 2 shots. The first caught Pettigrew in the chest. The second took him in the throat as he fell from the saddle. The remaining men broke and ran, spurring their horses back into the trees without a backward glance. Silence rushed in, heavy and sudden. Nally was beside me in an instant, hands pressing hard against my wound. Blood soaked her fingers, steaming against the snow. "Stay with me," she said, voice shaking but strong. "You do not die." She tore strips from her shirt, packed the wound, bound it tight with hands that trembled only after the work was done. Hoofbeats echoed again. I reached for my gun, but Nally stopped me. 4 cavalry riders emerged from the trees. One dismounted, an old sergeant with a gray beard and eyes that recognized me at once. "Still finding trouble," he muttered. They took in the scene. The bodies. The blood. The woman with my gun in her hand. Then the sergeant nodded. "We'll escort you." For once, justice stood on the right side of the snow. The Apache camp rested deep within a canyon, hidden where stone and shadow folded together like a secret the mountains had sworn to keep. Smoke rose in thin blue threads from low shelters. Children's voices drifted through the cold air, soft and alive. Old men watched from the edges, eyes sharp with a lifetime of war and loss. This was not a place of fear. It was a place of endurance. Nally dismounted before I did. Her boots touched the earth, and something in her posture changed, like a cord pulled tight inside her finally loosened. Then it happened. A small boy broke from the crowd. "Shima!" The sound of his voice cut straight through me. Nally dropped to her knees just as he collided with her, arms wrapping around her neck, face buried against her chest. She held him like the world might try to steal him again, rocking back and forth, whispering prayers and promises in Apache. I looked away, because watching it felt like something breaking open inside my ribs. My heart cracked clean in two. That was when I understood what I'd known all along. She belonged there. An old Apache man approached me. His hair was white, his face carved deep with lines that told stories of battles I'd never hear. He studied me for a long moment, measuring my scars the way warriors do. "You brought her back," he said. "She was never mine to keep." He nodded slowly. "You could have kept her. White men do as they wish. Not this one." He placed a hand on my good shoulder. "You are an honorable enemy." Niley returned with her son clinging to her side. She knelt so the boy could see me, her hand resting gently on his back. "This is my friend," she said softly. I crouched down, ignoring the pain in my shoulder, and met his wide, dark eyes. "Your mother is very brave." He said nothing, just held her tighter. Niley stood. Her eyes met mine, and in them was everything we could not say. Everything we would never have. She stepped forward, placed her hand over my heart. "Shikisi," she whispered. "My friend." Then, softer still, "Shirdai." More than that. She kissed me once, slow, aching, final. Then she turned and walked back into the camp without looking over her shoulder. I let her go. The ride home was silent. Days passed. Then weeks. The mountains returned to their quiet ways, snow melting into streams, spring creeping in like it always did. I healed slow. The cabin felt emptier than it ever had before. Then summer came. I was mending a fence when I heard hoofbeats. I turned, hand resting on habit more than fear, and there she was. Niley rode a painted mare, her hair long and free in the sunlight, wearing the colors of her people. She dismounted and stood a few steps away, smiling through tears. "My son is safe," she said. "My people go south." "And you?" I asked. She touched her chest. My heart was not there. Neither was mine. I pulled her into my arms, holding her like I was afraid she might fade if I let go. The mountains watched. The wind carried nothing but silence and promise. Hope found us again. Quiet. Hard-earned. Real. If this story stayed with you. If you felt the cold in your bones, the weight of loss, and the quiet hope buried beneath the snow. Backhand index pointing right. Tap the like button, it helps these frontier stories reach more souls. Backhand index pointing right. Subscribe to Frontier Tales for more true-style Wild West storytelling. Backhand index pointing right. Share this story with someone who still believes the past has something to teach us. Speech balloon question for you. If you'd stood there in the snow, would you have walked away, or chosen to save her? Tell us in the comments. We read every one. Until next time, partner.